If you've made it this far, you've probably realized something important. The global economy isn't held together by just banks, governments, or stock exchanges. It is held together by the confidence that ships will arrive, confidence that contracts will be honored, and the confidence that oil will continue flowing tomorrow just as it did today. And when the confidence begins to crack, markets don't wait for the certainly but certainly they react to the fear. That reaction is where the real story begins because most people imagine an economic crisis starting with a stock market crash or a banking collapse. But the history tells us something different. Many of the world's largest economic disruptions have begun with energy. The energy powers nearly everything in modern civilization. Before a product reaches a warehouse shelf, before a package arrives at your front door, or before food appears in a grocery store, energy moved it there. Every truck requires diesel. Every cargo ship burns fuel, and every commercial aircraft depends on the refined petroleum products. Every tractor harvesting crops consumes the diesel fuel, and every factory manufacturing the consumer goods requires the electricity and natural gas or petroleum based inputs somewhere in the production process. When energy becomes more expensive, almost nothing escapes the consequences. Economists sometimes describe the oil as the world's master commodity because nearly every commodity depends upon it. Whether it is steel, fertilizer, plastic, medicine, electronics, clothing, or food, energy is built into nearly every stage of production. That means rising oil prices aren't simply about filling your gas tank, they're about the hidden cost embedded inside virtually every purchase you make. Think about a loaf of bread. The wheat may have been planted using diesel powered tractors. Fertilizer production required enormous amounts of natural gas. Harvesting equipment consumed more fuel. The grain traveled hundreds of miles by truck or rail. Processing plants required the electricity, and packaging used petroleum based plastics. Disruption centers moved the pallets with the fuel, powered equipment before the trucks delivered the final product to the local grocery store. Every single step carries an energy cost. Now multiply that process across against millions of products that are moving through the global supply chains every day. Suddenly, a conflict occurring halfway around the world no longer feels so distant. It's sitting in your shopping cart. This is why the financial markets monitor the geopolitical tensions so closely. Wall Street isn't reacting because of investors enjoying following military news. They're reacting because every missile launch, every naval deployment, every sanction, and every diplomatic breakdown forces markets to ask one question: could global energy supplies become disrupted? And if that answer might be yes, prices begin adjusting immediately. That adjustment becomes a chain reaction, and the energy companies recalculate production costs. Transportation firms revise their shipping expenses, airlines reevaluate their ticket pricing, manufacturers adjust future contracts, and retailers prepare for higher inventory costs. Consumers eventually experience those increases throughout the economy. And this isn't speculation, it's happened repeatedly throughout modern history. During the 1973 oil embargo, energy shortages reshaped economies around the globe. The fuel prices surged, inflation accelerated, long lines formed at American gas stations, and the governments introduced measures conservation measures that would have seemed unimaginable months earlier. And the lesson wasn't simply that the oil became scarce. The lesson was that the perception of the scarcity changed the economic behavior almost overnight. Businesses that would have seemed unimaginably months earlier, the lesson wasn't simply that the oil became scarce or delayed, like I said. The investments consumers reduced, spending markets became volatile, and the economic growth slowed. Today, the world is different in many ways. The United States produces significantly more oil than it did decades ago. Advances in domestic energy production have transformed America into one of the world's largest producers. Yet the globalization has also made economies more interconnected than ever before. Even if the United States produces substantial amounts of energy domestically, the oil remains part of global market. Prices are influenced by not only by the American production, but by worldwide expectations of the supply and demand. And that means the disruptions anywhere can create the consequences everywhere. Imagine dropping a stone into a lake, and the splash occurs in one location, but the ripples spread across the entire surface. The global energy markets work much the same way. The one regional crisis sends waves through the shipping, insurance, energy markets work much the same way. Manufacturing, transportation, investments, and consumer confidence. That it spreads through all that. And some of the ripples fade quickly. The others, they continue expanding long before the original event has disappeared from the headlines. Insurance companies provide another fascinating example. Whenever the commercial vessels enter the regions considered dangerous, the insurers often increase premiums dramatically. That additional expense doesn't disappear. Shipping companies pass the cost to the importers pass them to the wholesalers, and the wholesalers pass them to the retailers. Eventually, the consumers pay more without ever realizing an insurance premium thousands of miles away contributed to the price increase. This is one of the globalization's hidden realities. Modern economies are astonishingly efficient, but they are also remarkably interconnected. Efficiency allows products to move across oceans at historically low cost, while interconnection means disruptions spreads just as efficiently. Now, this helps explain why the economists closely monitor the shipping lanes alongside stock exchanges. A delay at one strategic maritime choke point can affect manufacturing schedules on multiple continents. The factories waiting for raw materials may slow production. The retailers waiting for shipments may experience shortages. And the prices can rise not because the products disappeared permanently, but because they arrived later than expected. Time itself becomes an economic variable. The businesses often operate using what economists call just in time supply chains. Instead of maintaining enormous inventories, the companies receive materials only when needed. These systems reduce the shortages cost and improves the efficiency, but the efficiency sometimes sacrifices resilience. When the transportation slows unexpectedly, our companies with limited inventories may quickly encounter shortages. The COVID-19 pandemic demonstrated how that fragile global supply chains could become, how they could become so fragile. The factories closed, the ports backed up, and the shipping containers accumulated in the wrong locations, and the consumers suddenly discovered that everyday products, from automobiles to household appliances, could become difficult to obtain. And those lessons remain fresh for the government, businesses, and investors alike. Now imagine similar disruptions occurring not because of a pandemic, but because of geopolitical tensions that threaten some of the world's most important energy corridors. That's why the analysts aren't simply asking whether conflict will expand, they're asking how the markets will it might expand, because in economics the perception often moves faster than reality, and sometimes the perception becomes reality all by itself. The next question is even more important. If the global energy markets can be shaken so quickly, what happens when governments, central banks, military alliances, multinational corporations, and financial institutions all begin responding simultaneously? Because that's where the story becomes much larger than oil. That's where economies, geopolitics, military strategy, diplomacy, and global power begin colliding in ways that affect every nation on Earth. Thanks for tuning in to the Unfiltered Political Lens. We'll explore how governments respond during the international crisis, why financial markets can accelerate geopolitical events, and whether today's tensions represent another temporary shock or the beginning of a much larger transformation in the global order. Thanks for tuning in to the Unfiltered Political Lens podcast, and we'll see you in part two.